The Walking Dead Season 8 premiere, Mercy. Now this episode is not only the first episode of the new season, but of course it is the 100th episode of The Walking Dead. So it kind of had a lot to live up to. It is not just the premiere, not just of the season, but this is the season that is all out war, but it's also the premiere that is the 100th episode. And that's a very rare thing. Typically, hundreds and 200 or whatever, it's kind of just like, all right, it's just in there somewhere. Seasons will be like one episode shorter or something like this. And they probably didn't necessarily plan it out. Maybe until last season, maybe they didn't want to do, an extra episode just to have the 100th episode be the finale. So they're like, well, let's just kind of wrap it all up and then boom, we'll have the 100th as the premiere. And I think it did a pretty good job as the premiere, and they had one small nod. I think it was really only like one true nod. I'm sure there were others that I just completely missed because 8 seasons, you forget some references and visual cues. But they definitely had some good stuff for it being just the premiere of this season, keeping the story going forward. And they had some cool stuff as far as like referencing old sequences. So to go for the references, this was one that I didn't notice on my first viewing. I actually saw it on Twitter, and it was funny because I was like, I noticed something at the end of this reference where I was like, I think that's a reference to the first episode, and it turned out like that whole sequence kind of was. But Carl, when he was walking around the gas station and he was looking for the guy who started talking to him, the part where he's like, walking around and he's going past the cars and he gets down to look underneath the car to see the guy's feet. It's just like the very first episode when Rick encounters the young zombie girl and he hears like shuffling. So he's walking around and then he gets down and that's when he sees the girl like go past a car or something. And that's how he realizes where this other person is. So that was the reference to, the very first episode, like Rick's first encounter with the zombie or walker. And I didn't really get that reference. I totally forgot. But it was funny, after everything was all said and done, after Carl was talking, well, mostly the guy was talking to him, saying, like, I just want some help. And Rick comes in. It was kind of funny, like, he just comes in, like, shooting in the air. It's like, get out of here. It was almost like he was, like a farmer or something. It's like, get off my land. So, he kicks the guy and was like, I shot above his head. We don't know if he was a spy or anything like that, but, I hope he lives. And so when Carl walks away, he's like, hope is not going to be enough. Rick looks back and there's this woman that's a zombie, and I was like, she looks just like the zombie girl except like a grown woman. And it was from a distance, but I was like, I feel like her outfit was the same, and they had it where, at least from the distance she was at, it probably wasn't exactly that way, but it looked like the bottom half of her mouth was gone, which is pretty similar to the girl in the first episode, where it was kind of like this part of her face was torn away and it was just like the bottom half. And I was like, I feel like that was a reference to the first episode as well, but when I was watching it, that's all I remembered. I was like, oh, I remember what the girl looks like in that first episode, and I thought they made that zombie woman in the background look similar to her. And I thought they were going to do the whole scene where he was just going to walk up to her and they would show what she looked like, and it's like, hey, check out her outfit and how she kind of looks like the adult version of that young girl that was in the other, in the very first episode, which oddly enough, technically if they wanted to make that reference, they probably could have got that girl back because it's been 8 years, so technically they could have done it where she was, old enough. But I thought that was cool, and like I said, I feel like that was also a part of the reference, and I was like, oh, that's pretty awesome. Like I said, they didn't focus on the zombie or anything, but I thought that was cool. Like, that was the part of the reference that I noticed, but that whole sequence of him, like, getting under the car to see the feet and everything, that was a reference to the first episode. So I thought that was definitely pretty cool. And then, of course, with this, just the main story of this episode, it being the premiere, it was actually really good. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it, because I didn't think they were going to get as serious as they did in this first episode, even though technically not much really happens. I was just happy that in the first episode it was like there's actually things going on, like they are going directly into the war, and they do some interesting stuff here. And I'll save like the crazy stuff because I'm sure there are people who may or may not be confused. You may have figured some of it out, but I'll save that for the end of the review. But as far as like what we got, I'll just say in the present, it was pretty good. We just go around. It starts off, Carl and Rick, and then it goes to the rest of the teams, and everybody's kind of doing their thing. Everybody's taking out the different lookouts and everything. We have basically like Team Twizzler, and they're, guiding the horde throughout the entire episode along the freeway, and, setting things up with Dwight, like, okay, well, we're going to have people kind of do this and set things up and have the horde. You send these people out down this path. We set up, a big explosion that, kind of kill them all off. So everything was going great. Like, they have their speeches and stuff. It's like, we're together now. You have Alexandria, the hilltop, and the kingdom going against the saviors, and everyone's rallied up together. Everyone has, the weapons, their ideas, and everything's kind of just flowing perfectly. Really throughout like the entire episode, everything kind of was just on beat. Like it's like they have their speeches, they have their goals, they killed like everyone they needed to take out. Rick had his moment where, you know, the dude he's like stabs in the stomach and he lets him talk for a little bit and he's just like searching through stuff. And so the guy is like, you know, I was there when you were begging and crying and like you'll see your son die. And he's just like, you know, he talks about his son, pisses him off a bit. So it's like, all right. And so he, you know, he hacks the wood and lets the zombie fall on him, which was, they had great prosthetics for that one, where it was like burnt up on one half of his body. I thought that was probably my favorite one in this episode, but they had a couple of them because they had early on in the episode when Daryl and Dwight were actually like, you know, shooting crossbow bolts, which it was kind of messed up that Daryl shot it into the tire. Like he definitely did that on purpose, but I thought that was really funny. But the part when Dwight was looking at Daryl, they have the zombie like right next to him, and they have the guy like turn his face, and like all of this was just all like missing, and you could see the teeth as he moved. And I was like, that was pretty cool. But I would definitely say like the pyro walker was definitely my favorite one. They had a really good CG one as well when they, after like the big explosion happened, and there was one like kind of wriggling on the ground, and it was just a head and like some bones and you could see through it. I thought that was pretty good too. As far as like the prosthetics or in general, even with the CG one that I thought looked good, the pyro one was definitely my favorite because it was so charred up, but it wasn't missing anything. It was just the skin was messed up, and I was like, that's actually kind of cool to see. It's not like burnt and it was falling apart. It was like, no, it's just burnt up and it healed as like this weird undead, you know, flesh thing. So I was like, I like how that looked, and it was just kind of cool. But they're going through, like I said, teams are working. The horde is, you know, going along the path as it should. Everyone's, you know, getting in their crazy, you know, weird makeshift armored cars and everything, and they get to Sanctuary, and that's when things start to get really intense because, of course, you know, they go out there, they do like a couple of shots, which they should have just done one. They didn't need to do three. They were using up a lot of bullets though, but the main reason was to, you know, kind of bring in the horde. But the whole time I was just like, oh man, I feel like they should use less bullets. But obviously they're making bullets, and I'm sure at some point Eugene will get back to making bullets for the good guys, or, you know, something like that. I don't know, but you know, they do the warning, and of course, we have our main couple of saviors come out. Negan comes out with his crew, and so Rick is like, all right, know all you guys. I love this scene where he's naming everybody, and then he talks to the woman Regina, and so he starts to go through his thing, and Eugene is like, I'd be remiss, it's like, you know, you don't talk, like, I know who you are, and I kind of like that line, but it's like, hey, all you gotta do is kind of give them up, you know, to like just cast them aside, everything's cool, you guys can live. This is like the only time I can really guarantee that we'll let you guys live is if you just kind of abandon the cause, we take out Negan, everything's all said and done. So of course nobody does that, they decide to side with him, and then, Gregory comes out. It's like, okay, I figured he'd be there. That's mostly from a comic perspective, so that kind of ended up being different than what I was expecting it to be, although I think this was, I'm pretty sure they do this, we might see this come back. It's different than in the comics because it wasn't this intense the very first time they did it. Not that I can remember, it probably wasn't. It's just been a long time since this story took place in the comics. But I'm pretty sure we're going to see them go up against them again as like a secondary, you know, kind of giant wave. Because this really didn't do that much. Not only do we not really see a ton of people, like we only see like Negan and a couple of other people that were with us, like lieutenants. And then other than that, we know that they were, you know, everyone was being shot at, so that's why they were hiding and everything, as they were kind of, you know, waiting for the horde to roll in. But yeah, Gregory is like, he comes out and is like, you know, the hillside is with the saviors, and anyone who attacks them will lose their home and be killed, and their family will be cast out and all that stuff. And of course, everyone's like, well, he'll, you know, we decided to follow Maggie instead of you. And I love that scene. I want to say his name was Sam. I think that's the dude. Every time I see him, all I think of is Trevor, because that's the guy who was the actor who like pushed Gregory down the stairs was Trevor from GTA 5. So that's all I think about when I see him, because I'm like, that's what I know him from. But the part where he got mad, where everyone like wasn't following him, and he was like, we had our little thing, you know, it was like, I took your liquor, and you gave me more liquor, and I took all of your stuff, and I invested a lot in you. And he was just like, I'm very, very upset, and he just pushed him down the stairs. I thought they were just going to kill him. Like, I thought he was going to like have his legs broken when he fell, and he was just going to be stuck there during all the chaos. But he ended up being fine. Of course, that led to a really crappy moment where, oddly enough, of all the people, Gabriel goes to save him, and it's like, if this was, you know, what was it, 2-3 seasons ago, sure, die, who cares, because it's Gabriel, no one liked him at first. But now it's like, dang, I don't want Gabriel to die. That's crazy. Especially not for Greg. Like, even the worst characters is like just above Gregory. I hate that guy. Even he's exactly the same from the comics. Um, it's just like, man, no one's life is worth Gregory's life. But of course, Gabriel ends up going out to save him. This is after all the absolute insane chaos. They even have it where Gabriel goes in, with the actual RV and they completely blow it up. So that was a cool little moment, which I feel like may have been one of the references to like, almost honoring the series, because it was like the RV was like the big thing. And even in the last couple seasons, the RV was like their big camper deal. It's always been an RV. Like outside of the time when they had the bus, it's always an RV. Like that's their mode of transportation. Like they have their cars and stuff, but it's always like, we need to go out and do like this big mission. Main characters, RV, maybe like 2 or 3 of the main characters in cars, and then of course Daryl's always in his motorcycle. But there's always an RV. Like I didn't think of that until like just now. It's like they used an RV, which is like always their giant transportation, as like their grand weapon during this attack. But big explosions happening. Rick kind of goes into tunnel vision. He's trying to take out Negan, which makes perfect sense. I love the scene where he's like, are you gonna make me count? And he gets to 7. He's like 7, and then he just cocks it and just starts shooting. And I was like, that's actually pretty funny, because at least it was one of those moments where in most TV shows, because even when it first happened and he walks out, it's just like, just shoot him, that's it. Like that's every TV show ever. It's like, just shoot the bad guy and it's over. Like even if someone decides to take over, the main villain's gone. I mean, no one does that because it's always like the main villain, so that's why it never happens in TV. But at least they had the moment where Rick did actually catch them by surprise. But of course, Negan and everyone else ultimately ends up surviving. They have the big explosion. He's caught behind some of the shrapnel, and Rick is trying to get him, and that's when Gabriel comes in, and he's about to get out. But of course, he sees Gregory. Gregory's a douchebag, so he's able to escape even through the gunfire and everything. He gets in the car, takes off, and then Gabriel has to survive. And that's how he and Negan end up together, because that was one of the things in like this season's I think it was like the Comic-Con trailer, like the original San Diego Comic-Con trailer that came out. It was like, okay, well, how does Gabriel end up with Negan? And it's through the very first episode. Like, they're just trapped. And I'm like, I don't know how this is going to play out. Once again, easily could have just been like, oh, that's Negan. I have an assault rifle. He's got a bat. I win. So it could be that way, but of course it won't be. They're going to talk, and I don't know. I mean, I know Negan's going to survive because, of course, he's the main villain. I don't know what they're going to do with Gabriel, so it's like, is he going to end up screwing up and is just going to be dumb and he dies in the stupidest way, where it's like he could have just killed this dude off the top, and then they talk and he's able, Negan's able to kind of knock the gun to the ground and, hit Gabriel, or even take the gun and, kill him. So I hope that doesn't happen, but it's hard to say. And even if Gabriel doesn't die there, I would have to assume he's going to at least be trapped, because that would mean the other saviors came in, got rid of the other walkers around the RV, or the little camper that they're inside of, and then it's like, okay, well, we're here to save Negan, now you're our new prisoner. So I don't think things are going to work out too well for Gabriel. I just don't know if he's going to get killed off yet. So that we're going to have to wait and kind of check out. But after all that chaos, everything seems to kind of be working fine. Like outside of Gabriel being captured and technically, Negan living, everything kind of seems to work out well. And then we get to see, as I'm still calling them, Team Twizzler. They go on and they have a couple extra characters with them. I believe the woman was from, I would have to assume the Hilltop, because they were the ones that were doing like archery and stuff. Or maybe, oh no, I guess it would be the Kingdom. They were the ones doing like all the different training. So they end up at one of the secondary bases, and it's like, all right, well, they have, like this line of walkers through a fence. They've reminded me of the prison a little bit. Maybe a reference, I don't know. That these are little things that are occurring. I didn't even think of that until just now. But they had like the walkers going through the fence, and it was like, well, we were hoping to do this silently and just have all the, the lookouts taken out through arrows. And I was like, well, you think you can hit them through this? And so it was like, well, it seems fairly unlikely with all these walkers kind of going through. It's hard to, shoot between the lines there. So they're at that base, and then of course we have the main characters. It's like, all right, well, we're, kind of still moving on. So they kind of attack like the main base, and now they're going out to the sort of outlying bases and everything. So I'm excited to see how things really play out as far as the speed at which they go. I don't know how many episodes we have this season, but with it being all-out war, I'm curious, especially with some of the stuff I'm saving for the end, especially with what they show as far as them jumping through time and going to like, Old Man Rick. It really makes me wonder how things are going to play out, because they teased a lot more than I thought they were going to with him waking up and also them playing Weird Al, which I loved. But it just makes me wonder, like, how fast is this story going to move along? How far are things going to get? And how quickly, well, I know how far they're going to get, but how quickly are they going to get to those points? And exactly how many things are going to be similar? Because it's war, and it's The Walking Dead. It's not a joke in the comics, and this is one of those times where they kind of have to do what they did in the comics, even though it sucks. And I'm really hoping, there's one thing I'm thinking of in particular that I assume is going to happen at the end of the season, considering what they showed with the Old Man Rick stuff, that I hope changes, but I don't think it will, because I'm going to feel like it's way too early, because it hasn't been enough time. That's all I can say without like spoiling it. It's just like a huge change in like too big of a shift. I feel like it's just way too soon, but we will see how that ultimately plays out. But as far as the main story, I thought it was really fun, and then there are the parts that are, like I mentioned early on in my review, probably confusing to some people, and that includes the Old Man Rick stuff and we'll go with sad Crying Rick. So Crying Rick, I have no reference for that. I don't remember where that is. I think that's not something in particular that's in the comics, because it's something happened, some people died. So we have Crying Rick, where he's freaking out, and that's where we have, I think it was the very end of the episode, was him talking about my mercy is greater than my wrath, or something like that, maybe the opposite. And so it's him freaking out, and he's like tearing up, and I'm sure that comes after kind of the big battle, maybe like the first really truly big battle that they have, and some people die off, and I feel like that's what it is, because this whole episode was like, well, this is our world now, we're gonna take people out. Even in the promo, it's like everybody's just super cocky, like, we're a team, which means none of us are dead. I'm just like, everybody's just like, we're gonna win, win, win. And I'm just like, well, dead. I've seen a couple faces that are not gonna be there soon. So it's just interesting, and the way they kind of cut to it, as far as like, sad Crying Rick, like I said, I don't really have much of a reference for that as far as where that's going to be. If I had to throw out a theory, I would say how we were, kind of going through things is that this was the beginning of the season. Old Rick is definitely the end of the season. I know that for sure. And then Crying Rick, I would say, is probably mid-season premiere or finale. Probably finale. It's like just sad and depressing. A bunch of people died, and it's not as simple as they thought it was going to be. I feel like that's where we are with Rick crying and freaking out. Just, I think he was sitting up against a tree, or it may have been a house that was just a tree in the background. But I feel like that's where that is. I know for sure Old Rick is going to be towards the end of the season. That probably the actual final episode will be the Old Rick stuff, and like I said, there's some things that go on there. Mostly I was surprised, the fact that they referenced the festival. That's what gave me a big boost, like, oh, they're, this isn't a joke, things are kind of moving along. So by the end of this season, things are going to be different, and it should be weird. I feel like it's going to end exactly where I actually ended at in the comics. Like, by the time this season ends, it will be exactly where I'm at in the comics going into the next the next set of villains. Or I guess I'm a little bit past that now, because I'm waiting for like the last compendium, because I know the comic is about to actually finish up. At least I would assume sometime next year. I know it was announced this year, so it might be ending next year, but I'm waiting for the last compendium to get like the last arc of the story. But man, it's going to be weird if it ends exactly like I think it's going to end, and I don't know how they would do that visually either. It's pretty simple, but just the way it would set up is, we'll have to see how it plays out. But I am very excited for this season. I'm curious if we're going to get these flash forwards in the next couple of episodes, or if that was just like, hey, at least for comic readers, check it out, here's what's happening, here's some theories that you can kind of work with, here's definitely what's happening, at least in the season finale, with Rick waking up and, having the gray hair and all that stuff, and the cane. So we'll see how that plays out. I'm, once again, super curious what is and is not going to stick as far as this battle and, this all-out war, and who lives and who dies, and, we have characters, once again, that don't exist in the comics, and how that's going to play out. Characters, who have survived in, in different ways and things like that. So where we are right now is very interesting. There's a lot of chaos to come, and I just don't really know what to expect. Like, there's like the main story arcs I got, but it's like, how is it going to change in between, from the comics? So I'm looking forward to this season. Like I said, I think this was a pretty good episode. It was, they actually did some stuff. It wasn't them talking about it, or like, we're about to do it. started the episode, because I for sure thought it was just going to build up, because it was like, we're going to war, and we would see them building up to the first battle. It's like, nope, first episode, first attack, went fairly well, and then we'll see, what happens once Negan eventually escapes, and he's going to be pissed, and then he retaliates, and that's when things are really going to kick off. So, excited for this season, worried for this season. All I can think about now, because of the old man Rick stuff, because I thought it was just going to be that scene of him waking up, and then it was like him talking to Michonne and talking to Carl, which they did show that he, if I remember right, he still had the patch on, so that's different from the comics, because when they get to like the old, he's not really old man Rick, he's not like a giant time skip or anything, although they could do that. I talked about that before. They might do that just to be like, yes, we actually caught up with the characters' ages, because technically it's been like 2 years or something in the actual show. So they might actually do that, but we'll have to see. But in the comic, Carl like gets over having the patch on, and you just see what it looks like. So we might actually get to that point. But ever since they showed that, they're like, yep, the festival is happening. Like in that moment, it was just like, oof, I know what that means. So it's gonna be a heck of a season finale, that's for sure. If you don't know what's coming, it's gonna be crazy. But good episode, I would definitely say, worthy of being the 100th episode. But I'm certainly looking forward to this season. Of course, we'd love to know what you guys thought about this premiere. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, least favorite parts about it. And I would love to know your theories on what is going to happen this season. If you're not a comic reader, obviously I would love to know your theories. If you are a comic reader, just put a spoiler tag. We can still go back and forth, because like I said, I know what happens, and I'm curious how things are going to change. So I would love to know your theories if you read the comics up to at least the end of this arc with Negan and everything. What you'd like to see stay the same? What would you like to see change? And how are things inevitably going to change, because we have, characters like Daryl, who doesn't exist. I can't even think, I never remember her name, but the girl who's actually eating the Twizzler, she doesn't exist in the comics. Morgan is dead. Carol is dead in the comics by this point. I'm pretty sure long since, by the comics, I think they died before they even got to Alexandria. Definitely Carol. But a lot of different stuff. So if you read the comics, we'd love to know how you guys think things will be different. If you haven't read the comics, we'd love to just know your theories in general. And like I said, I want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.